Hey gang, so I am really excited to meet with you here pretty soon and talk a lot about the idea of flipped learning, share some examples of what I did in my classroom, and also give you some time to kind of figure out how that's going to look for your own classroom. So, in the spirit of flipping, we're going to do a little bit of that before we meet. So, there's a few things that I want to tell you about, just so you know what to expect and what I need you to do when that training day finally comes around. So first thing, here's what I want you to expect. We're going to talk a lot about, especially at the beginning, about the concept of flipping. But I don't want to get too much into theory. I want to spend more time kind of on examples. So your job when we're talking about that is to kind of do the spaghetti test. So I'm going to throw a bunch of stuff at you, and we're going to see what sticks. So don't feel like you have to be an expert on everything. Just kind of listen with the idea of finding something that's going to work well for your situation and running with that rather than trying to do anything. We're also going to talk a lot about how to create your own content. That's going to be a big bulk of the time. We'll talk about tech considerations, what kind of technology you need, or other things that or even if you need technology at all. Also, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about what's going to happen in the classroom, and this is going to be some hands-on stuff. So your trick is going to be to take those examples, those things that we talk about with doing in the classroom, and figuring out how to tweak that for whatever subject area it is you teach. And I'm also going to give you a lot of time to play, to practice, to plan. I want you to make sure that you leave feeling like you have an idea of not only what flipping is, but also a plan on how you can do that. So here are some things that I need to make sure that you bring when we meet. So first of all, you're going to need to bring a device. This is BYOD. Bring your own device, whatever works. So if you want to bring a laptop, go right ahead. Just make sure if you have a laptop that it has a microphone. Most laptops do have a microphone installed. They're not the best, but it'll work. If you're bringing a tablet like an iPad or an Android, fantastic. If you have a Chromebook, feel free to bring that too. Now, when you bring that device, I'd really like you to have the screencasting software already taken care of or already put on your device. So I'm going to give you the links in the email that I send out on how to get this stuff. But and if you have something else, not a problem at all. But if you're new to this, here's what I suggest. If you're bringing in a laptop, go to the techsmith.com website and get the free Snagit trial. Snagit is a very easy entry into screencasting, and we can talk more about how to get the full version of that. If you're bringing the tablet, some free apps are things like Show Me or EduCreations. My favorite one is a paid app. It's about $3, $3 to $5. It's called Explain Everything. You can do a lot with that. If you're doing Chromebooks, make sure you get the Snagit for Chrome extension. So like I said, I'll give you links to all of that stuff so you don't have to worry about it. Also, some other things that I want you to bring, and this comes into the planning part of you being able to walk away with some ideas that you can use in your classroom right away. I want you to bring an idea for some kind of step-by-step tutorial, some kind of explanation that you repeat throughout the day. And we're going to teach you how to make a screencast out of that. And also bring a unit plan, so something that you're thinking of, or a unit that you're thinking of flipping. And you don't have to bring all the stuff in. I mean, you can if you want. But a list of all the activities that you and your students do, and we're going to try to figure out a way to kind of build flipping into that. Before we meet, watch the rest of this video. It's from a conference that I did a while ago, but it kind of gives the background on the theory of flipping done right, and gives you some so that we can spend time on the examples when we meet together. And also, this is embedded in a survey, or at least it should be. I'd really love for you to fill that out before we meet, so that way I can know a little bit about you, and we'll be all set. So I will see you soon. Watch the rest of the video. Talk to you later. little bit of what I think flipped learning done right is. In fact, I've been doing this for a few years in my classroom. And as I go around talking to teachers about this, there's a lot of times that this kind of comes up in conversation. I get a teacher who says, yeah, I flip my classroom. I have my students watch Khan Academy videos all the time. And to be honest, I kind of cringe a little bit when I hear that, because this is what I worry about. I think a lot of people have this idea of what the flipped classroom is, and they say, well, instead of lecturing to my students during class and then sending them home to do worksheets, we're just going to flip those two. And I kind of think that is like flipped learning's evil twin there. I don't think that's good teaching, and it definitely doesn't lead to quality learning. What we have to start thinking about here is, how can we do this the right way? How can we leverage technology and some of these tools to have more time as teachers to be able to make an impact with our students in the whole teaching and learning process? Now, Aaron Sams is one of the godfathers of flipped learning. And one of the things that he always says is this, that there's no such thing as the flipped classroom. So if we're going to meet together and you're looking for this box that you can just kind of take this stuff off and check off all these things and say, hey, I have a flipped classroom, probably not going to work out for you. What this does, though, is this lets you know that there's lots of ways that you can use this idea of flipping to meet the needs of your students. So feel free to kind of think of, okay, how am I going to tweak this to meet my own kids' needs? Now, Ramsey Musalam is a teacher out in San Francisco who's done a lot of research on how to do this the right way and how to do this the wrong way. And this is how he describes flipped learning. He says that flipped learning is this intentional removal of direct instructions, so like lecture and kind of step by step, this is how you do this, or this is how you do that. Remove that from what's called the community learning space and move that into the individual learning space. Let me give you an example. These are some of my kids, 5 out of like 32 in my 5th period chemistry class. Now, I've got a wide variety of kids here. I've got some kids that went on to become chemical or are studying to become chemical engineers at Michigan State. I have some kids in here who were just absolutely brilliant, but if they weren't entertained, they had no problem just picking up a book and ignoring things and failing my class. I have some students in here who very much needed some hand-holding, who were constantly worried that they weren't doing things exactly right. And they were always saying, Mr. Spencer, is this how I do number 5? Mr. Spencer, are you sure this is what's going to be on the test? I'm sure you've had some of those. I had some students in here who were very good at playing school. They could ace multiple choice tests like it was like there was no tomorrow. But when it came to actually learning things and being able to describe what they learned, there was a gap there. I also had some students who really struggled. I'm sure some of you are like me. I had students who the only reason they were there is because their patrol officer was checking on them. And the problem that we run into is that when we have such a wide variety of students, we're never gonna be able to meet the needs of all of them. So this is kind of my problem. This is what I was doing in my classroom and kind of what was happening. We've got our whole Bloom's taxonomy here. And what I was doing when I was lecturing a lot at my students and then sending them home to work on problems is I was going at this with the whole one-size-fits-all attitude. I was trying to teach my students the basics in this large group. And the problem I was running into is that the students who already got it, they were sitting there waiting to move on. The students who were really struggling were frustrated because they couldn't keep up. And then I had a whole range in between. And because I was trying to do this all the same way, it was a hit or miss thing. But the worst problem was I was sending my students home after this to work on the application piece, on these higher order thinking skills. A lot of them were going home to houses where parents or they didn't have anybody who could help them out, and they were frustrated there too. And the problem then happens is that these frustrated students who didn't get things done come back the next day. They have lots of questions, and instead of being able to move on, we have to go over this again and again to make sure that they get it. And I wasn't having enough time to be able to get to some of those higher level thinking activities that I really wanted to spend class time on. But what if there was a way to be able to let some of this background knowledge, some of these lower on Bloom's taxonomy activities, what if there was a way for students to do those at their own pace? What if there was a way for the kids who get it already to be able to move faster through that? Or the kid who really struggles to be able to have access and kind of go over it a few times as needed in order to understand the basics. And then when we come to class, to be able to turn that into a learning community where students have that background knowledge and they are then working together to do these higher level thinking activities. That's really what flipped learning is. Now, what I want to do here is show you a video. This is by a teacher. Her name's Katie Gimbar, and she works with this Friday Institute. And she explains why she flipped her classroom. Take a look.
I've been teaching math for the last 5 years, and this is why I flipped my classroom. This is what my classroom used to look like. I was teaching to the middle group of the class, the students that could follow along with what we were doing, and we were going through the content, while I had a group of higher level students not challenged, bored with the information, ready to move forward. And I had a struggling group of students that were not receiving enough effective remediation. They didn't have the basic content they needed to be working on the content we were currently covering, or they needed more help in order to be successful. This led to a 90% use of class time being spent on delivery and review of content. 90% of the time I was at the front of the classroom lecturing to a group of students, and I wasn't meeting all of their needs. 10% of class time was actually spent on application, which led to, depending on students, to do the application needed to be successful. They had to go home or outside of class and work on applying the concepts that I was giving out in class. This constant battle of not reaching the needs of all students and feeling the need to differentiate for all of my learners allows teachers to feel overwhelmed and ineffective because we see the need for differentiation, but there's just not enough time for effective differentiation. This called for a drastic change in how we teach. This is where flipping the classroom comes in. Now the students outside of class preload the content. They get the information they're going to need for class. They can pause, rewind, and rewatch the videos as many times as they need to. They can post questions online to their classmates or to the teacher. And it's a self-paced program where they can be remediated by going back and reviewing former topics, or they can work ahead when they've already mastered a concept and are ready to look forward. They get the content here before class so that when they come into class, my whole classroom has now shifted, where I'm at the center of the class, working between these differentiated groups focused on different pieces of application. I can now work between each of these groups that are moving at their own pace. This has created a 90% use of class time spent on application of the content, and 10% of class time is spent on delivery of content, when I can answer questions that have been posted or take any other questions that have come up from applying the content. Now in my classroom, all students are engaged and challenged. I have time to work with each group, give them individualized time and instruction as they need, and I can actually work between each of the groups to provide effective differentiation for all my varied groups of learners. My struggling students, my middle group of learners, and I can now extend and expand on my higher level students' prior knowledge and challenge them in the classroom.
So I hope this gives a background of what flipped learning could look like. Now remember what Aaron said, there's no such thing as the flipped classroom. And when we get together, we're going to talk a lot about the different kinds of wrinkles and other things that we can do in our classrooms to really use this concept to meet the needs of our students, to let them learn at their own pace, and to really turn that classroom into this community learning space.